Bore da. Rwy'n dod â chyfachion yn enw Crist o Esgobaeth Llundain. Diolch i chi am gael fi yma i siarad â chi. Mae'n fraint a'ch anrhyddiaeth. Diolch. So I'm afraid that is as far as I can go with my language app, Duolingo. So apologies for not being able to say more, but I'll take it in English from now. But it's a lovely language, and it's a great pleasure to be with you today. As Bishop of Islington, my role is to encourage and develop church planting. And that includes starting new Christian communities in every tradition of the church, in every context, in city centres, inner cities, outer estates, suburbs, market towns, and rural areas, with every model, from parish revitalizations to plants into warehouses and shops and cafes, to missional communities and homes, to fresh expressions of every kind. We run our work from the Gregory Centre for Church Multiplication. That's ccx.org.uk, named not just after your bishop, but after Pope Gregory, who had a vision for the English in 597 AD. And he sent Augustine from Rome to preach the gospel and plant churches. I am really excited about the stories that I have heard about your courage and your determination to embrace change, to try new things in God's kingdom, to invest in growth alongside the healthy but painful pruning, and to seek a unity in doing this with one another and the humility of welcoming help from outside your diocese. You know, this says so much about you. And I feel I'm speaking here today on holy ground, offering you all the encouragement I can give you. So thank you, Bishop Gregory, for your leadership. Thank you for your amazing team. Thank you to every one of you here today for the part you are playing in these challenging times. So today in this short address, I want to look back with you. This has been a very, very hard year. We're in the midst of one of the most challenging seasons of our generation, in our lives, in our communities, in our nation, and you have responded quickly and compassionately to taking church online and joining with the compassionate response to help the most marginalized and vulnerable people around us. The challenge on church leaders, particularly in the confusion of change, learning new skills, working out how to do ministry in an instantly different environment, has been like being in a crucible. But crucibles are where precious metals are refined. Where is God in this? Well, God never promised that we wouldn't face difficulties, but he does promise to be with us in them. He does promise wisdom when we ask for it. He promises strength when we trust him and peace when we pray with thanksgiving. There is hope because of the resurrection. And that's why we can point to Jesus as the source of hope and meaning and provision in crises like this one. So we look back knowing that in the midst of the challenges, God is faithful and gives us a purpose. But today we also look forward. You've got a great strategy in St Asaph's to respond, to recover, and to reconstruct. And so I want to encourage you to use this time, especially as we see a second wave of the virus coming or arriving already, as a time of preparation. We need to create space in our diaries to plan for that reconstruction. And, you know, the challenges we face are just like the early church. You're in great company. We're trying this for the first time. It feels like building a plane as you're taking off. Yet we have the hindsight of history with us. Focusing on health for our churches will lead to growth. That's kindling the fire of a deep relationship with God in our hearts through worship and prayer and reading the scriptures, something all of us can encourage one another to do. Helping to disciple someone else, taking responsibility for their lives as much as our own, reaching out to our communities with compassion, learning to share the gospel, going to people rather than expecting them to come to us. That's how the church grows, as it behaves in a healthy way. But church growth is not enough. Even if the church doubled in size, there are still many, many, many more people who we will never reach with what we're doing right now. We need to start new churches in new places to reach new people in new ways. That is what church planting is all about. Most of these will start small, but some will require a bigger intervention. And every church, every one of us can get involved in this. It's choosing what is the best thing for each one of us. For us, we use a process. First of all, we explore the opportunities around us with a deanery or a borough, asking churches, who are you not reaching? We get a map out and, a big map on the floor and draw the area. And then we write down the places and groups of people we're not reaching as churches. And then through prayer, asking God, which group that we've written down should we be reaching? Who do we send? Under God, how do we do it? There was a sports-focused church that has emerged from the Hampton Deanery in London, where Park Run started. They just said, actually, every Saturday morning, people are gathering together. Why don't we start church around that? A cafe church using a Costa Cafe started because one parish realized that people who are using the shopping area were in a different place to where the parish church building was, never came to their church services. So rather than expecting them to come to them, they went to the shopping centre, and they started in the Costa Coffee outlet, meeting on Wednesday evenings with just a group of 4 or 6 people. And there are now 15 unchurched people coming each week to that cafe. We explore opportunities. Then we develop the plans, doing research. We involve coaches. We have training. We have a course called the Plant Course that's online. And then we get together the resources that we need, whether it's money or people or skills or structures or whatever. There's one church called Mosaic Church. It's led by a GP who is a bivocational church planter. He's a full-time GP and he's a church planter. And he has a leadership team that's a multicultural leadership team. It's a multicultural church plant. And they plan to launch in Harrow, but just as they were planning to start, COVID-19 happened. And so they said, okay, we'll still start, but we're going to launch online. They started using Facebook advertising to get to their local audience. And they now have several small groups meeting on Zoom. They've used the Alpha course to reach new people, and people have got converted through that and have begun to start joining these other Zoom groups. So exploring, developing, and then planting. When you plant, it's getting people to pray for you, encourage you, and to stay connected with those who have sent us. When we plant, we have learned as well to take an apprentice leader with us so that they are learning on the job. And in time, they will go on to plant themselves to another group in the community. And then when they do that, we both take on apprentices again so it can multiply. Every church, every missional unit can do this. It's about being intentional. Archbishop Tito in Chile went to a church of 18 people who said they wanted to wind down as a church in Santiago. And he said to them, no, you cannot do this. The gospel must not be silenced in this place. And he said to them, I want you to plan to plant a church. I'm going to come back in 6 months' time and see how you're getting on. When he returned, the church had grown to 30 people. And they were planning to plant a church and praying for the 4 people who they were going to send to a new area of the city. He said the energy was just completely different in the room. They'd made a decision not to shrink, but to plant and to be intentional around doing that. So whilst that's something all of us can be involved in, sometimes we need bigger interventions like your Resource Church project in Wrexham. And in my experience, and we've created 100 of these in England over the last few years, these churches can be game changers in their cities and towns and regions. They work with the bishop to revitalize and plant churches across a region. And in the process, they are developing leaders and developing missional resources like the Alpha course and helping others to be able to use them too over time. So whilst other churches are brought new life over a period of time, so the wider church benefits. It's like a rising tide floats all the boats. And by the way, you have struck gold with the kitchens. We lived a mile away from Andy and Rachel in London, and they are wonderful, humble, gifted, bold leaders. So pray for them, encourage them, build them up, draw them in. They will need all of that and more as they start this bold adventure. So prepare to explore, develop, and plant new Christian communities as creatively and as determinately as possible. Look forward. Look back, look forward. And today we look up. The psalmist says, I lift my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. You are not alone. You are not on a lone quest. We have a quest, yes, but God calls us to go into the world to make disciples in Matthew 28, verse 19. And in doing so, to plant churches. That's, I think, the baptizing and teaching part of that verse. But he also promises that he will be with us always to the very end of the age. When we planted into East London, my wife and I were daunted. It was a very culturally diverse area, 45% Muslim, 45% atheist young professionals, 10% older white working class East Enders. It was a whole mixed bag, and we just didn't know how to connect with them, but we knew God was calling us to go. Our sending vicar, now a bishop, Sandy Miller, prayed Joshua 1 verse 9 over us. Isn't that interesting that Bishop Gregory had already been thinking about that verse as well. Joshua is told, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. The most important attributes of a church growth and church planting vision are love and courage. You know, we are compelled with the love of Christ to go in response to this love, to share that love with others. But we need his courage to step out into the unknown, to give what we have been given and give that away. There's some great values for this work are aiming high with audacity, a big God-shaped vision as you have, but also to bow the knee with humility, acknowledging that we cannot do it without God's help and other people's encouragement. To give away the gospel with generosity, giving our best people for planting and starting new things around us. And we enjoy this adventure with others in unity, because God has called everyone to get involved in reaching everyone in every way. We need each other, and every one of us has a part to play. And we do all of this with tenacity, because as we persevere, we will see God's kingdom come in beautiful and miraculous ways. So may the Lord bless you as you look back, as you look forwards, and as you look up, in Jesus' name. Boed ach gloith, bendithio, wrth ichi edrych yn ôl, wrth ichi edrych ymlaen, ach wrth ichi edrych I fyny, yn enw Iesu Christ. Amen.